Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a very interesting interview. We welcome in Abdel Bioud, graduate student at McGill University in Montreal, Canada, and Vice President of Communications for the McGill Students for Israel Association. Abdel, welcome, sir.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me, sir.
It's my pleasure. Okay, so how did someone who was born in Algeria, lived there for over a decade, first of all, I need to ask the question, how does almost anyone on a college campus today get by heading an organization supporting Israel, let alone someone with your background? And tell us, start us off with your background and what led you to your support of Israel.
Well, frankly, I was just sick and tired of, whenever I turn on the TV, if you're an Arab, you're either a crazy dictator or a crazy Islamist. And for years, I wanted someone, to speak and, to say, the things that I said, but no one show up. So I decided to take matters in my own hand, and I joined the McGill Students for Israel, specifically for that. And the funny story is, so I wrote this article that I guess you read.
Yes.
And I sent it to the McGill Daily, which is the McGill Students Journal, and they refused to publish it.
Well, I'm not surprised about that. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know enough about the McGill Journal, but I'm not surprised, in generally speaking, that would be the case. And then what happened?
Well, and then I decided to take matters in my own hand, and I sent the article to the Times of Israel, even to the Washington Post, and they said that they wouldn't publish it because you have like an op-ed submission section where
Right.
you can send your own op-ed. So I sent it to a couple of different places, and it was only the Times of Israel who actually accepted to run the article, and 24 hours later, it was on.
All right. Yeah. Now you point out in the piece, Abdel, that you say all Arab countries have dictatorships and they have ruling gangster families, and you go on to talk about what their plan is and how they go about implementing it with the use of force to maintain power, keep the people living in fear, sending kids to government-controlled schools so they could get indoctrinated with the ruling family.
Yeah.
The country's great. What's been the pushback on campus for you?
Well, nothing really, except from the McGill Daily. Everyone else have been very supportive, of my article. And again, only the McGill Daily. Other than that, it's been, I had very positive feedback from a lot of people.
Is there a counter group on campus supporting the Palestinians or calling for boycotts and sanctions against Israel, divestment against Israel?
Oh yes, a lot of them actually now. There's a whole boycott movement, and we're actually working to to find out which group is encouraging the boycott of Israel. Because frankly, if you ever lived in an Arab country like I did, there's no way that you can support the values that they stand for. No way. And you would automatically support Israel, simply for the values that it stands for. And it just boggles my mind how can anyone not support Israel.
All right, now, you say that as a Muslim.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Listen. I was born in Algeria, and I went through a civil war there. And at the time, both my parents were, executives. They were working, but it was also involved politically, and they were trying to get religion out of politics in the midst of an Islamic insurgency. So, we got harassed, death threats, etc. And, I understand that, for a lot of people here, for years now, I've been hearing, why don't moderate, Muslims or Arabs speak up? And, I like to call them just sane people. And the problem is, if you're, say, in Algeria or in any other Arab country, if you want, say, freedom or democracy, the government shoots at you. And if you want to grab a beer after a long day of work, the Islamist shoots at you. So you're trapped, And it's like this day in and day out, every day for years. And at some point, you just give up. And, you either move out of there or you stay there and, you can't say anything.
We're talking to Abdel Bioud, graduate student at McGill University in Montreal, VP of Communications for the McGill Students for Israel Association. Why do you think, on college campuses especially, why do you think there is such a huge push against Israel?
Well, I think, to start with, you're dealing with kids, who are 18, 19 years old, and they have this very, romantic view of the world, and, hey, Palestinians are oppressed, and, I'm a good person, I want to help them. So it's very naive and, a very romanticized approach, of what, the reality actually is, and actually dare any of these students to go live in an Arab country or to go live, and see the difference.
Yeah,
Themselves, because at the end of the day, if Palestine, if the Palestinians, Gaza, etc., if they would just stop, launching rockets and just build, like a country that stands for freedom, individual liberty, respect for the, for the rule of law, prosperity will be there in a heartbeat, and things will be great.
Yeah, well, especially when it comes to the Palestinians, that Yasser Arafat robbed them blind. Their present leadership is probably still doing it, and of course, when Israel gave them Gaza, it was taken over by Hamas, and you have the Palestinian people in their schools, and you talk about schools, they teach their kids to kill the Jew, to take Jerusalem with their blood. They celebrate suicide, homicide bombers. They call them martyrs. They welcome them back from Israeli prison. They name soccer stadiums after them. It's a culture of hate. It's a culture of war. It's a culture of destruction, and it's a very sad culture.
It is.
How does anybody grow up there?
It is, and the thing is, you have to look at it through the right filter, through the right lens. These people lack confidence in themselves, and they lived a lot of trauma. So you have these people, with layers upon layers of traumatic events in their lives. That's how you have to look at it. So, for example, whenever there's something happening in the Middle East, I don't think that you should bring a political analyst. You should bring, you should invite a psychiatrist. Like a psychologist, or, because, these people are mentally ill, and, they need a psychiatrist to, to fix it.
Well, let me we have a couple of minutes left. Let me further the conversation a little bit. When it comes to, you talk about moderate Muslims, there's so much killing going on in the Arab world and in parts of Africa when it comes to radical Muslims killing Christians. And anybody who would dare convert. The laws in some of these countries, Saudi Arabia, our great friend, our soldiers there can't even wear a cross or a Star of David. And, homosexuals are killed in many of these countries. So what is the true? Again, I don't pigeonhole any group, but what is the true Muslim in the Middle East? Is it more the radical Muslim, or is it more the docile, mainstreamed Muslim?
Well, I guess, it depends of what country you're in, and, and the level of, of freedom, in that country. But, I guess, the less free the country, the more radicals you'll have. That's, the trade-off. Right. And, I think what you have to realize that most of these Arab countries are official countries. They were made up by by the ex-colonizers. So, for example, in Algeria, you have all these different ethnicities in Algeria, which have nothing to do with each other. So, for example, in the eastern of Algeria, people, want freedom. They don't want Islam, etc. But in the West, it's the complete opposite. So you have, these opposing forces in every entity, and I think today, the moderate Muslim, I consider myself to be not a moderate, but a sane person. That's how I like to call myself.
Sane person. Yeah, that's a good description. Listen, Abdel, I admire you greatly. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you again. Thank you very much for coming on.
Well, thanks to you, and thank you for offering me, this platform to share my views with your viewers.
My pleasure. We'll send you the link. You could send it all over the place. That is Abdel Bioud, ladies and gentlemen. When we come back, Peter Marisi on the Steve Malzberg Show.